We've talked about ambitious coasters a few times before on the channel, and today we're back at it with the top 15 countries for coasters in the world, broken down by their most ambitious coaster. I'll run through these countries in alphabetical order, and for the coasters I've already talked about in previous ambitious coasters episodes, I'll keep their segments a little bit shorter. Let's kick this off of Australia with none other than Big Dipper at Luna Park. This new for 2021 Intamin Hot Racer coaster is a single rail, the first by Intamin, but the interesting thing about it is that it has a launch. This is the world's first launch single rail coaster, and while the RMC Raptors are considered better attractions, they didn't have launches, and Intamin took on that challenge. So credit where credit is due for Intamin. They are never afraid of stepping outside the box and doing something creative or ambitious. For people like me, who didn't really know about this park before this roller coaster, it was a ride that put Luna Park on the map. Sure, it doesn't even go 45 miles an hour and it only has 2 inversions, but Intamin made a very interesting ride here. For Belgium, I gotta go with the one and only Ride to Happiness. This coaster has received so many positive reviews, it's one of the best coasters in the world from what I've heard. It's a Mack Rides extreme spinning coaster, taking the already loved Time Traveler to a whole new level. This ride looks insane, and according to most people, this is the best coaster in the entire country. Leviathan was a good option for Canada, but I ended up going with Dragon Mountain from Marineland. This aerodynamics creation is bizarre. It features 4 inversions, but they're located so far apart from each other over the course of the ride. The setting of this experience is pretty incredible, and the ride has 5,500 feet of track. The fact that they built a coaster this long in 1983 is pretty crazy, and it's a very strange experience. There's a lot of turns and a lot of moments that are really slow, and the ride just drags on for a super long time. It has 2 saving graces: A, the setting, and B, the super unique bow tie element towards the end of Dragon Mountain. This one's a weird one, but just because of how long it is, I think it was a very ambitious project. China has an unbelievable amount of roller coasters, but for me, the most ambitious would be Coaster Through the Clouds, just because of how big this thing is. This coaster sports a drop of 255 feet, and you go 85 miles an hour. Along with that, this is a super long ride in terms of track length, as it's just under a mile. This really does look like a coaster you would build in a video game, with those big drops, big drawn out turns, and supports. I don't know what the forces are on Coaster Through the Clouds, but it sure has good speed, and if the airtime hills are any indication, you should get some negative G-forces. I doubt I'll ever ride it, but it looks like a great time, assuming it's smooth. I had some trouble with Denmark. They have a decent amount of coasters, but none I would really call super ambitious, so I went with Tornado from Bakken. This is a spinning coaster, partly outdoors, partly indoors, but it looks pretty pedestrian if you look at its stats. The ambitious part, or maybe it's just the unique part, is how fast the cars spin, or at least the option of how fast they spin. The ride operators can push the vehicle leading to boost mode, which is significantly faster than normal mode. If you do boost mode, it looks like one of the most insane coasters in the world, while normal mode is a traditional spinning coaster from Intamin. This part of the ride is super unique, and it lands it on this list. Tuatatas at Parc Asterix is a good option for France, but I chose Hyperspace Mountain from Disneyland Paris. Maybe this is controversial, and I'm saying it's ambitious in comparison to other Disney coasters, but it's a very cool looking attraction. Originally opening in 1995, Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain Rebel Mission has a couple of great elements, like the launch, those inversions, and the theming. Specifically, there's 3 inversions on the attraction, and I also love the facade, it's excellent. Again, maybe part of it is comparing it to the other Space Mountain coasters around the world, because this one is significantly more intense than any of the others. At Walt Disney World, I feel that Rock and Roller Coaster and Space Mountain, and now Tron, it's all a little redundant with the amount of indoor roller coasters they have over there, but then you look at Disneyland Paris, who already had a launched inverting indoor roller coaster, and then they went on and added Rock and Roller Coaster, a launched looping indoor coaster. So that was an interesting move, but anyways. Germany is absolutely stacked in the theme park and roller coaster department, but to me the most ambitious coaster in the country is Carnen at Hansa Park. I've talked about this ride before, so I'll keep it pretty brief, but long story short, this ride is built by Gerstlauer, and it takes you up to hypercoaster heights before dropping you down and going through some massive maneuvers. The ride then becomes more low to the ground, showcasing all of that speed. In addition to that, this coaster has some crazy surprises along the way. If you don't know them already, I won't spoil them here, go watch a review. For Italy, I chose Altair. Once again built by Intamin, I tell you, they build some crazy stuff. This is one of their 10 inversion roller coasters. This coaster looks pretty crazy, especially the back-to-back-to-back-to-back rolls to end the ride. Again, smoothness is a big factor. How smooth is Altair? Because if it's not smooth, it could be an uncomfortable experience. Cinecittà World only has 2 roller coasters, and also I probably mispronounced that, but Altair looks like a good one. On to Japan for Dodonpa, a coaster that I have discussed in the past, but it's still the most ambitious coaster in Japan. This is the first coaster we've seen from SNS today, and this attraction takes riders from 0 to 112 miles an hour in 1.6 seconds. That is an unbelievable acceleration. Hopefully this ride reopens because it's one of my top bucket list coasters in the world. There's nothing that matches that launch and that experience. Another one I had a tough time with was the Netherlands. This country has a lot of coasters, but none that strike me as super ambitious. So I chose Gold Rush from the Saharan, once again a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster. The most unique thing about Gold Rush is the fact that the riders vote on whether you go forwards or backwards by using a button on their restraint. It's super interesting. This makes it so you never get the same experience, which I love. Considering the fact that Saharan's only ever coaster is a Vekoma Junior coaster, this is clearly the standout of the park, and it looks like an awesome Gerstlauer. Hopefully I have an opportunity to visit the park and ride the ride one day because it looks like a good time. Formula at Energylandia was my pick for Poland. Now this might surprise you because the stats of this ride are pretty pedestrian, but let me explain. This ride originally opened in 2016, and it was the first new age Vekoma, showing how the company had completely changed. Because of that, you could argue that this is one of Vekoma's most important roller coasters, because while I'm sure someone would have bought one of their coasters eventually, Formula was a great example of what Vekoma could now do. This is much more impressive and much more fun than an SLC or a Boomerang. So when you put the context around it, this was an ambitious coaster for Vekoma, coming out of their shell, coming back into the theme park market, and really surprising all of us in a good way. Formula opened the door for so many other coasters, like Abyssus in the same park, and the newly opened Phoenix at Fort Summerland, and so many more. Without Formula, we wouldn't have all of these awesome roller coasters, which would be quite sad. For Spain, let's talk about none other than Dragon Kong at Portaventura. This is another inversion machine, originally opening in 1995. It's a B&M sit-down roller coaster, one of the rare B&M sit-downs. It's got a good layout, but obviously the focus of this coaster is the inversions. That goes without saying. Take one look at this coaster's layout and you know exactly what it sets out to do. Flip riders upside down. The biggest thing about this coaster is that it was the very first coaster in the world to have 8 inversions. That's why this coaster makes the list, because it had literally never been done before. Portaventura got a world's first, and it's still one of their premier attractions to this very day. These final 3 coasters and final 3 countries I've discussed in previous Ambitious Coasters episodes, so I'll keep it pretty short. Formula Rossa checks in for the UAE, and it clocks in at 149 miles an hour. Yes, that is the fastest roller coaster in the world, and I don't see it being broken anytime soon. Are you surprised that Intamin comes up again? They have dominated this video and dominated this list, and for good reason. And while they aren't using the hydraulic launch anymore, it did allow them to make some incredible launches and some incredible roller coasters. Smiler at Alton Towers is going to be my pick for the UK, and I didn't really consider anything else. 14 inversions and under 4,000 feet of track, it's crazy. Pair that with a creepy theme, and this is a record I don't see being broken anytime soon. From what I can tell, it hasn't even been attempted for the last 10 years, as this ride opened in 2013. Maybe Cedar Point, Magic Mountain, Kings Island, or Energylandia will give it a go, but for now, the Smiler stands out as the world's most inverting roller coaster as it flips riders upside down 14 times. Finally, for the United States of America, it's X, now X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is a coaster I've talked about plentifully on the channel, and it's a ride I really want to get on soon. This ride originally opened in 2001 as the world's first 4th dimension roller coaster, and not only did it have hypercoaster heights, but the riders were also flipping during the entire experience. Not only is it popular, but it also has inspired other coaster models, i.e. the SNS 40 Freespin. So long story short, X2 is crazy and arguably the most ambitious coaster in the entire world, at least in my opinion. So there you have it, a breakdown of the best countries in the world for theme parks by their most ambitious coaster. Please let me know what you would change in the comment section below, because there are just so many roller coasters to pick from in a lot of these countries that it was tough to decide, and it's also possible I forgot about a ride or two. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.